The architecture of memory. The theme, complex trust and the unspoken. The air in the grand atrium grew dense, taking on the heavy, physical quality of a damp wool coat. The scent of sandalwood and rain anchored the space. BBB lowered his sage stick. The glowing ember at its tip cast a brief, warm reflection against the cold forged silver bangle at her wrist.
Bunny Eenie,
she breathed. The raspy, crushed velvet texture of her voice seemed to lower the ambient temperature of the room. BBB froze. The precise tailoring of his white robe settled perfectly around his frame as his posture shifted. He pushed his rectangular shades down the bridge of his snout. Behind the dark lenses, the intricate red mapping of his sclera framed the absolute, unyielding calm of his green pupils.
"Nobody calls me by that name except for..."
he began. He stopped. The words caught in the quiet architecture of the room. What followed was a profound, stretching silence. It was the longest glance they shared between them. The space separating their forms was charged with an extremely strong magnetic energy, pulling at them with the relentless gravity of a collapsing star. Yet, they remained anchored. It was not fear that kept them rooted, nor was it simple worry. It was a complex, fragile trust. To step forward was to acknowledge a reality that would permanently alter the foundation of his existence. To touch her was to accept that the past he left behind was merely a shadow of a much older design. He studied the midnight indigo silk of her garment. The fabric possessed a masterclass drape, absorbing the dim light, offering no reflection, only depth. She moved with deliberate, purposeful grace, her presence a testament to timelessness rather than fleeting circumstance.
"You know me, don't you?"
he said, his bass-heavy tone cutting through the quiet.
"I mean, before all of this, before the dreams."
She held his gaze. The soft, genuine laugh that had melted his defenses moments ago was replaced by a look of profound, quiet sorrow mixed with absolute clarity.
"I'm grateful for you,"
she replied softly. She inhaled, her lips parting to deliver the next sequence of words. The revelation hung in the space between them, a gem of undeniable truth waiting to be placed into his hand. Then, the atmosphere fractured. A sound tore through the atrium. It was not an explosion. It was the mechanical, violent tearing of the frequency itself. It possessed the harsh, abrasive texture of raw iron dragging across glass. It instantly cut out all other audio, creating a vacuum that sucked the breath from their lungs. The ambient light of the sector snapped into a harsh, blinding static.
The sensory richness of the space was obliterated in an instant. The deep hum of the city, the subtle crackle of his sage stick, the rhythmic pulse of the six-pointed star stitched onto his chest, all of it was swallowed by the deafening void of the sound. "Take shelter," a voice commanded. It was impossible to tell if the words came from her, from Nari, or from the deepest, untouched vault of BBB's own intuition. BBB moved. There was no wasted motion, no frantic scramble. He moved with the fluid, calculated grace of a master craftsman executing a final cut. He reached out, his hand closing not around her wrist, but gripping the heavy, dense weave of her indigo silk sleeve. The fabric was cold. He pulled her with him as the obsidian floor beneath them began to ripple and splinter under the sonic pressure. They threw themselves behind a massive, unpolished basalt pillar just as a shockwave struck the towering brass doors of the archive. The beautiful, dark patina of the aged metal warped under the impact, the air filled with the sharp, acidic scent of scorched ozone and pulverized stone. Dust rained down around them, coating the immaculate white fabric of his robe in a fine gray ash. Nari's voice broke through the static in BBB's mind. The tone was devoid of its usual levity. It was measured, observant, and deeply serious. The grid is collapsing. The architects did not send drones this time, Mystery. They sent a frequency wipe. They are trying to erase the sector. BBB kept his back pressed against the cold stone of the pillar. He looked down. She was close now, pinned beside him in the narrow shadow of the shelter. The magnetic pole that had separated them was gone, replaced by the stark, physical reality of their proximity. Her silver bangle rested against his forearm. The metal was ice cold. He reached up and adjusted his shades, securing them back over his eyes. The green center of his vision pierced through the settling dust. Wisdom drop for the hour. True elegance is not found in the absence of destruction. It is found in the ability to maintain one's form when the structure around you collapses. They missed, BBB said, his voice a low, steady rumble against the chaos. He looked toward the brass doors. The impact of the architect's weapon had not destroyed the vault. The shock wave had struck the unyielding metal and forced the ancient, heavy tumblers to shift. A deep, resonant click echoed through the ruined atrium. The archive was open.
The heavy brass doors of the archive sealed behind them with a definitive, resonant thud. Inside, the atmosphere was entirely devoid of the violent static from the sector above. The air tasted of oxidized copper and ancient, undisturbed dust. This was a sanctuary of dormant frequencies, a vast labyrinth of architectural precision where sound itself was cataloged in physical form. Towering monoliths of grooved black vinyl rose like pillars toward a ceiling lost in shadow. They did not fight their way through this vault, they tuned it. For what felt like hours, they moved in a synchronized, silent ballet of craftsmanship. She traced the deep, tactile grooves of the monoliths, her cold forged silver bangle gliding over the surfaces to locate the fractures in the rhythm. Where she found dissonance, BBB followed. He drew the fractal leaf from his side, letting the vibrant red, gold, and green energies bleed into the stone, reweaving the broken chords into a seamless, low-frequency hum. They restored the original beat, piece by piece. When the final monolith hummed with perfect alignment, the vault illuminated with a soft, warm amber glow. The task was complete. BBB stood near the center of the atrium, lowering his leaf. He watched her as she inspected the smooth surface of the restored stone. The heavy drape of her midnight indigo silk shifted, absorbing the new light. "Hey," BBB said, his bass-heavy voice vibrating smoothly through the calibrated acoustics of the room. "Nice ting. It don't sit right that you know my names, but I don't have any for you." She stopped. The silence that followed was heavy, deliberate, and thick with an agonizing tension. She turned slowly. The movement was a masterclass in controlled grace, every millimeter of her turn calculated to command the space. Then she delivered the look. It was a gaze that bypassed the physical realm entirely. It stripped away his tactical composure, effortlessly slipping past the rectangular frames of his shades to grip the very core of his being. It was an absolute, devastating internal meltdown, masked only by his rigid, impeccable posture. The red mapping in the whites of his eyes surged, the green pupils locking onto hers as his mind scrambled to process the sheer weight of her presence. "The name you have always known me by," she replied, her raspy, crushed velvet voice echoing softly against the vinyl monoliths. BBB froze. The amber light flickered. "What wait away the blazing blueberries of the fields of gray is this, really?" BBB simply adjusted his shades, pushing them firmly back up the bridge of his snout. The phrase echoed in his own mind, matching Nari's disbelief. He searched the deepest archives of his memory, but before the revelation could fully surface, the room responded to their absolute harmonic alignment. The original beat was awake, and it demanded to clothe its masters.